So I know we have an hour scheduled, and I want to make sure I can get through the presentation and answer any questions that you might have as we go along. I will take some breaks to answer questions. If you want to take yourself off mute and ask me questions, that's fine. If you want to put something in the chat, that's okay as well. If you want to wait till the end, I do have some time at the end for questions as well. So feel free to jump in and ask questions at any time that's comfortable for you. So my name is Angela Brecka. I can get, oops, here we go. I am the web content strategist for the University Libraries at Western Michigan University. And today I'm going to be talking to you about rewriting and reviewing content on your website with intention. And before I get started into the actual presentation, I wanted to take a couple minutes to introduce the MiALA Web UX interest group, which I'm part of. And this is the group that's bringing you this presentation today. So if you're not familiar with the Web UX interest group, if you're not part of it, or if you are part of it, you may not know that we had a leadership change just recently. And right now, the chair of our interest group is Denise, and she's on the line as well. And then there's me, I'm the vice chair, and then Scott Russell is our secretary. And unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today. He might be listening in, I'm not 100% positive, but, and Scott and I work together, so we're lucky that we are in the same office and can share ideas and jump on the call with Denise as we're talking about things that we want this interest group to do. So one of the things that we are trying to do over the next year is to bring some educational opportunities like this one to the group. I know some people that are joining us today might not be in the interest group, and that's great. We're trying to open it up to anybody in MiALA that's interested in learning more about web or user experience type of things. So stay tuned. I'll have a little more information at the end about our next event that we have in the works right now that we're planning and hoping to be offering to you in October. So today what I want to talk to you about is a process that we went through here at Western Michigan University over the last about a year and a half of reviewing and rewriting all of the content on our site. So I'm going to kind of talk you through the steps that we took, but then I also want to be able to provide you with some things that you can do, some small steps that you can take to look at your content and decide what changes might need to be made. First, I'm going to kind of talk you through what we went through on our end. So as I mentioned, I came on board here at Western Michigan University about a year and a half ago. So I started in January of 2018. And when I came on board, I knew that there was work that needed to be done on our website. It hadn't been thoroughly reviewed in a while. There was some changes that had been made, but a lot of the content hadn't been looked at, hadn't been reviewed, was old and outdated and incorrect. So we knew there was some work to be done. And the first thing we did is we worked on some user research. We wanted to make sure we understand how our users viewed the site, how they used it, where there might be some pain points for them. And most of this research that we did was really for our stakeholders within the libraries. We didn't do a ton of research outside of to our patrons and our users at that point. We really wanted to get more of a feel for how our stakeholders within the libraries were using the site. And so a few things that we did was we had, the first thing we did was we had an all-staff meeting. This had already been planned, but at that meeting we really talked to library faculty and staff about what they thought the purpose of the site was. How did they think we should be using our website? And I should mention, when I talk about our website, I'm talking strictly about our public site. We did not do anything with LibGuides or any other external plugins that we might have with our site. So library search was not part of this. We use Primo and Alma. Primo's our public-facing interface. We did not do anything with that. This was strictly our website that's part of Western Michigan University's larger site. So the first thing And so the first thing we did, we had an all-staff meeting. And then we also did an online survey where we asked some questions about kind of what people felt were important and how they were using the site. And then we also did some small group sessions where we had opportunities for people, small groups, to get together, about 8 to 10 people. And we talked about kind of what we heard during the survey. What were the big themes that we heard or we found in the survey results, and kind of talked through those in depth. We did actually do a paper survey to our patrons as well, so students and faculty on campus that came in to use our library services. Unfortunately, the timing on that was pretty bad because we did it, I believe, during finals week of the spring semester of 2018, and we didn't get a lot of results. I think people were, busy thinking about finals, wanting to get their work done. So we didn't get a big response on that, but we did get some feedback that we used as we were moving forward with our content review and rewrite project. So out of that user research, we learned kind of 3 big things. We learned that navigation is confusing, that content is buried on the site and hard to find, and that our content needs to be more engaging, that we weren't doing a good job of marketing the services and the resources that the library has available. So after we did that initial user research and we found those kind of 3 themes that we were talking about, we decided to go ahead and take a few steps right away. A couple things that we did was we added a feature area and an infographic bar to our homepage. We changed one of the icons in our gold bar, which is like a call to action bar, which I'll show you in a second. We approved changes to the navigation. So we said, we know we need to make some changes to the navigation, and we had a recommendation of how we wanted to make those changes, and that recommendation was approved for us to go ahead and move forward with. And then we embarked on a content review project, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. But just to kind of give you an idea of what a couple of those changes are, small changes that we made to our homepage based on the feedback that we got during the user research, I just wanted to show you when I'm talking about our infographic bar and our gold call to action bar, you have a point of reference in our feature. So this is our gold action bar here, and we changed one of the icons in there. We added the Access My Account icon because we found that this was one of the things that people found was buried and hard to find, and was one of the things that people were using the most. And then we added this feature area, which is in the middle, which includes an image or a video, a block of text, and a call to action button, or a button that can send people to do something or for more information. And then we added this this gray infographic bar, which is very similar to the call to action bar at the top, the gold bar, but it allows us to add basically 4 more ways that people can get into the information as quickly as possible into our site. So, so those were kind of the changes that we did right away once we had done some user research, and we found these were some quick and easy ways that we can address those concerns and themes that we saw that people wanted to have changed on our site. The next piece that we dug into after kind of the user research was a content strategy piece. Actually, before I move on, I just want to make sure, did anybody have any questions about the user research part of it? All right, well, if any questions come up, please, like I said, you can go ahead and ask away, or wait until the end and we can talk about it more then. So the next piece is content strategy. So we really looked at putting together a complete content strategy for our site. And some of you might be familiar with this quote from Christina Halverson, or you've read her book, or you've been to the Brain Traffic site and know kind of that part of the work of putting together a content strategy is figuring out how you're going to create and deliver the content and how you're going to have workflow and governance around it. And so we really looked at these areas as we were putting our content strategy together. This is an old quad graphic that Brain Traffic had put out about putting together a content strategy. This is the one that we used as we were moving forward, but since this time, Brain Traffic has already actually rolled out a new version of this, and I've included the links at the bottom of the presentation, so when I send this out, if you want to go and check out the new one, you can do that as well. But this is the one that we used as we were putting together our content strategy for our site. So we looked at things like substance, workflow, structure, and governance. Some of this stuff we already had in place. Governance we already had in place, and workflow we kind of already had in place too. But we did go ahead and review it and make sure that it was still appropriate with what we were doing with our website. And we also then looked at substance and structure. So we looked at things like, you know, what's our message, what's our tone and our voice, and how do we want to write for the web. We looked at how things are structured within the template that we have available through Western Michigan University. And we put all of this together into an actual content strategy document, which I'll show you in a little bit. Part of the work with doing content strategy, the first thing that we did was actually do a content inventory and audit. So we actually looked at all of the pages that we have on our site, and we determined whether those pages were being used, whether they should be archived, whether they should be deleted altogether, or whether they need to be changed or rewritten in a way. So we put a list together. And just to give you an idea of what that looked like on our end, and there's a lot of different ways you can do it, inventory and audit. So this was the way that we chose to do it. Most of them are in a spreadsheet format like this, but basically we got a list of all of the pages that we have in there, and we added notes to them. For us, we knew that we were going to have a new structure to our site and a new navigation. So we were able to say, will this page be staying? Will it be removed? If it is staying, what section will it be going into? And if there were any notes about the content, if something was inaccurate or needed to be rewritten or updated in some way, we made notes on this spreadsheet with regards to those changes and edits that might need to be made. Part of the kind of the next part of the content strategy that we did after the audit and taking a look at all of the pages that we had was we actually wrote a content strategy document. So we documented basically kind of what our purpose for the site is, and we documented what our voice and tone is, and what our objectives and strategies are for the site. I did include a link on this page. I'll show you, and you are welcome. This is public, so you can go out and take a look at it if you want to read through our strategy. We borrowed some of this from SurveyMonkey and a couple other places that we were able to some other sources that talked about their kind of strategy. So some of this is based on that. But as you can see, we have our purpose for the site, we have our guiding principles, our target audiences, and objectives and strategies for our site. This is really to help us guide the content that is going out onto the site and how we write that content. And this document became really important as we moved forward with rewriting all of the content on our site. And as I mentioned, it is available on our public site if you want to go out and take a look at it, borrow from it. You're more than welcome to do that. So the next piece of this content strategy part of the project that we were working on was to actually review and rewrite all of the content. And included in that was to improve the navigation as we were rewriting the content as well. This piece and this part of the project was the part that took us the longest, and we broke it into two phases. We did one phase in the fall of 2018, and that included our About section and our Contact Us section. And then we did the second part of the project in the spring of 2019. And that we did kind of all of the rest of our site. So we had three big sections that we were working on during that period. We worked on Find Items, Get Help, and Visit Us. Those were the three new sections that we, and ways that we were going to be using our navigation to help people get to our content. So those were our three new navigational areas. And one of the things that we did while we were rewriting the content was we actually put teams together to help us with this process. So we have what we call content teams, and then we had content approvers. Our content teams were responsible for identifying content that went in each of those sections, and then the content and for reviewing that content. And then the content approvers were kind of the final group of people that looked at the content before it went live on the site. And to give you an idea of what that looked like, we had put together a wiki page for this project, and you can see the phases. So each phase we had broken down into particular steps and dates associated with us to kind of keep us on track. We wanted to make sure when we rolled out the new content that we rolled it out after the end of the kind of after finals, between the breaks in the semester, so that we weren't interrupting any workflow that our librarians may have or anybody else that uses our site may have. So you'll see all of the dates and who's responsible. You'll take a look at the bottom, you can see who our content teams were. We tried to keep content teams fairly small, making sure that we had subject matter experts on those teams related to the content that was going into those sections. And then content approvers were those people that were kind of overseeing those areas as a final approver before the content went live. And as I mentioned, we tried to keep the teams between like 5 and 7 people to keep it small so that we would make sure we could get the work done. This really helped this process of working with these teams to get buy-in on changes that we were making to the site and making sure that the information that we were putting out there was accurate. These are the people, like I mentioned, that are experts in the areas in which we were putting that content out. And then finally, after this whole part of reviewing and rewriting content, we actually rolled it out and added it to the new site. And we did that, like I said, in the break between the semesters, and that worked out pretty well. I would have everything kind of ready to go and ready to flip the switch as soon as we were the semester ended. I thought this might be interesting to some of you that write content on a regular basis. The week that we launched the kind of larger phase of the project, which was just here in end of April, I don't know how many of you use Grammarly, but it's one of the things that I use. It's a plugin on Chrome that identifies any grammar or spelling issues, that type of thing. And when I got done with the week that we launched the new content for phase 2, I got a report from Grammarly saying that I had 80,000 words checked that week, which is a large amount of words. And I knew there was a lot because there were quite a few pages that we went live with that week. So it was interesting to see it in writing, and that I was more productive than 99% of Grammarly users. So, and I did a little looking not too long ago and looked to see like on average, what's the size of like a senior thesis, that type of thing, and I read somewhere around 75 to 80,000 words. So I felt like I was pretty productive that week with those amount of words being checked and added to our site. Just to give you an idea of kind of what this meant in terms of the work that we did while we were rewriting the new content, we ended up with 38 content contributors between the content teams and the content approvers. One thing I will say is that I actually wrote all of the content for it. So I took the content we had currently and rewrote it, and then our content contributors reviewed and approved it. So there was only one person that was writing the content, and that was something that I did. Also, throughout this project, we had 45 pages that we ended up removing or combining with other pages, and we added 28 new pages as we were working through the content strategy and the content review and rewrite. So I'm going to stop there for just a second and see if anybody has any questions. I don't see any in the group chat, but if anybody wants to take their mic off, they're more than welcome to. I think you can do that and ask a question about the content strategy piece of it, whether it's the content strategy document or the reviewing and rewriting piece that we did. So I got a question about where did you review the text? In Google Docs? We actually reviewed the text. So I created the document in Word originally, and then we created them in, or we reviewed them, the content approvers and the content team reviewed them in, sorry, I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden, not in Google Drive, OneDrive, thank you, sorry. In OneDrive. So I shared the documents in OneDrive. People reviewed them, added their notes to them and changes to them. And then I would actually combine all of the notes and changes that people made in the document. And then the same when it came to the approver. So once the content team was the first to review and make changes, and then I would have kind of a second draft, and then I would share that with the content approvers, and we go through that process again. I liked using OneDrive because everybody could see the changes that people were making, so that if people had questions or concerns about a change that somebody else was making, we had an opportunity to talk about it and figure it out as a team together. Is there any other questions? I did find that the using a Word document worked the best, or a document that people could share and make changes to worked the best, versus me sending out a document and having people come back and give me changes, and then trying to figure out which changes should be made and which one shouldn't be made, especially if they were contradictory. So all of us working off of one document seemed to work really well for this process based on my previous experiences. Okay, I got a question about if people had stylistic recommendations that didn't fit the voice. So that was one of the reasons that we did the content strategy document ahead of actually rewriting or reviewing any of the content. Was I wanted to make sure we all were on the same page as far as what is our voice and our tone, and also stylistically how we were going to write content. So the things that we made sure we were all on the same page about, that we were writing in first person or second person, that we were writing conversationally, that we were really using simple language. And a lot of that is spelled out in our content strategy document, and we made sure that people were on board with that content strategy before we started rewriting any content. If there was anything that I got from somebody that maybe didn't fit stylistically into our content strategy, then I would try to educate them on why it didn't fit, and also to rewrite it in a way that says, okay, I appreciate the information that you're giving me, and here is how it should, I would write it so that it fits into our tone and our voice. And a lot of times then they would see kind of why their original recommendation didn't quite fit. And as long as I gave them kind of an option to say, is this okay, does this work for you, then usually we could work together to make sure that we came up with something that worked, that was like accurate, but also fit within our style. But I think having that document ahead of time really helps, because then it's kind of a roadmap as you're writing content. If you don't have, you're not sure like what you want your tone or your voice to sound like, or you're not sure what are the voice or tone style that you want to use, writing style, I should say, that you want to use. It's harder to make those decisions as you go. If you have it done ahead of time, it makes it a lot easier as you're writing content. And especially if you're the one writing the content, but also if you're the one that's working with people that are providing content to you as well. All right, well, so I wanted to just give you a brief sneak peek at how our site ended up when we, after we went through all of this kind of writing and review of our content. And I'm not going to walk you through the whole site or anything, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of where we ended. As I mentioned, we have these new navigation area on the left-hand side of our site. When you're on desktop and mobile, it's in a hamburger menu. And we were able to reduce the size of our navigation. Originally, I think we had 12 different menu items, and there was really not a strong reason why some of the items were in the navigation. It's just over time they had been added, and there wasn't any kind of strategy to why we had certain things within our navigation. So this is where we ended up. We, as I mentioned before, we reduced our navigation down. About was already in our navigation, and the directory and contact us was also, but we were able to move towards having a much smaller navigation. And the 3 new sections that we added kind of took all of the content that we had before and put them into these new sections, and that was Find Items, Get Help, and Visit Us. Within the Find Items section, I'll just show you an example of kind of a couple things that we did within our site. One thing is the Find Items, Get Help, and Visit Us are really like wayfinding pages. They are mostly links to other sections or other pages in the site. It's really helped to reduce the amount of confusion that we had within our left navigation and helped to make it much easier wayfinding for our users. And as you can see here, within our find items, as I mentioned, it's a lot of kind of links and information to what we'll find beyond those links. The other thing that we did was we really wanted to highlight our collections, which we didn't do before very well. We really just had a link with, or a page with links on it. And we wanted to make sure this time that we really were able to highlight some of the collections we have. So a lot of our collections pages look similar to this, where they are sections within, like in our digital collections, it's kind of the categories within digital collections. And as you click down within a collection, you get to see kind of more, again, graphical representation. I think one of the themes that I know one of the themes that we heard when we were going through our initial user research was that we weren't doing a good job of marketing the collections and services and resources that we have. And so we wanted to make sure it was a lot more visually appealing as we moved forward. All right, so I know that I think the part that you might be most excited about is, what does this mean for you? Before I get to that, though, I wanted to kind of just give you a little bit of a heads up that what we're going to be working on here next at Western Michigan University is really focusing on user experience testing and ongoing maintenance of our website. So we want to make sure that we are reviewing our content on a regular basis so that we hopefully don't have to go through a huge review and rewrite again like we did over the last year. So we want to put in place regular review of our content. And we do have, which I think I'll show you in a couple minutes. So we do have what we have for each page on our site. We have a content owner assigned to that, and their responsibility is to make sure the web page is kept up to date and to review on a regular basis. Part of my job is going to be, how do we manage that maintenance and that review, and how do we encourage the content owners to review the content on a regular basis. And then, as I mentioned, we're also going to be looking at user experience testing. So over the next few months, I'm going to be looking at ways that we can do regular, scheduled kind of usability testing and user experience testing to make sure that we are listening to what our users want and need when it comes to our site. As I mentioned before, a lot of the research we did at the beginning was with our own stakeholders internally, and now we want to make sure that we are doing some research to the patrons and the people that are actually using our site. So what can you do? I think this is the part that is the most interesting. We talked through what we did here at Western Michigan University, and I know that we are really lucky in that we have a web content strategist that specifically is here to review and make sure content on the site is up to date, and making sure that we are doing things with regards to our website that keep the user in mind. And not everybody has the luxury of having one person that does that. I know probably many of you wear multiple hats and you're doing all sorts of things, and web might be a small piece of what you do. So I wanted to give you a few suggestions of things that you can do, even if you're wearing multiple hats and doing a lot of different things. So how can you do web content? How can you keep up on web content, but on a smaller scale? So start small. That's my recommendation. And how can you do that? So one, I think, is get to know your pages. If you're not even familiar with what pages you have out on your site, that's a great starting point. At least get a list. Here are all the pages I have. That's a great place to start and a great way to get to know your pages. And then from there, if you have time and you can, look at Google Analytics for each of your pages, get an understanding of what pages are most used, what pages may not be used as frequently or as often. And then I think one of the best things you can do after that is really to update content that is inaccurate. So if you don't have time to rewrite all the content, that's okay. At least make sure that the content that you have out there is accurate and that there's nothing that's out of date. And then, of course, if there are some pages that just aren't being used, are really out, I mean, the entire page is no longer valid or relevant, then go ahead and unpublish those pages or archive them or delete them, whatever your system allows you to do, but take them off of the site so that they're not cluttering up your site and they're not giving, inaccurate information to the users that go to those pages. Number 2, find your content owners. I think this is one of the big lessons that I learned as we were moving through our content review project was that knowing who the subject matter experts are for certain sections or pages is really important. They need to, I certainly am not an expert on all things library. I'm still learning, being new to libraries. And so making sure you know who your go-to people are when it comes to content on the web is really important and very helpful. And then encouraging those content owners to keep their pages up to date. And as I mentioned before, we actually do have a content owner list that we keep. And this basically is just a list that we have out on our wiki that says, here's the page, here's the person that owns that page. And that way, if you need to go to talk to somebody, find out more information about a page, understand whether that page is relevant or not relevant, you have somebody that you can connect with on that. This person also on our end is responsible for any time a change is made. Part of our workflow is that if a change is made to a page, they need to be aware of that change and approve that change. So if somebody comes to me to make a change to a page, I always make sure to loop the content owner in and allow them to make sure that the change that is being requested is appropriate for that page. But it's really helpful if you can have a list of all of your content owners so that you have people that can support you in the work that you're doing. And then finally, I think if you, as kind of a third step, if you can, what I say, discover your voice. So what are the style, what kind of style, can you put a little style guide together for your site? Can you identify your voice and tone? Do you know who your audience is? I think at a basic level, if you can just make a list of the style tips that you want to make sure you use as you're writing content for your site, it is very helpful. As I mentioned before, that was one of the things that I'm glad we did ahead of writing any of the content was putting together our content strategy document that identifies our style and our voice and our tone and our audience. So as we're making decisions about the content that goes out there, we have that to be able to refer to and help us to make decisions as we're putting content out on the site. One of the things that I didn't mention before, but if you go out to the content strategy document or web page that we put together, there is a style guide associated with it. And one of the things we did was put together a content style guide for content that's produced by the libraries in general. And then we have a web style guide which has some specific tips and styles that we want to use that are relevant to the website specifically. So we have kind of 2 style things that we refer to. And then we also have a style guide that is university-wide as well. So we make sure that we are looking at all of those things as we are writing content or producing content for the site. Okay, that is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take some more questions about content strategy. So do you have any recommendations for resources and or best practices for making sure a website meets compliance standards for the visually impaired? Yeah, so we do have, here at Western, we're lucky that we have access to a site called, or a website that we have partnered with a vendor called Site Improve that helps us to make sure that we are being compliant when it comes to accessibility. But there are a lot of, I think, resources out there when we're talking about accessibility. And I know one of the things that you can go to is, I'm not sure on the website, but I will find the link and I will share it with everybody. But there is a government website that will give you kind of all of the standards with regards to accessibility. And that's usually what I use as kind of best practices. But like I said, we're also lucky in that we have partnered with a vendor that crawls our site and lets us know when we have accessibility issues. But I'll find that link and share it out with the group. So I got a question. Could you tell us more about the voice and tone you chose? Ooh, how would you describe it? So let me go back and at the, oops. I just want to take a look, have you take a look at our content strategy document that gives all of our information. So yeah, let me go to our style guide. So originally, I borrowed this style guide from, as I said, from MailChimp. Sorry, I think I said something else earlier, but it was from MailChimp. And they have a style guide that they've made available through Creative Commons that you can use and rewrite as needed. And so some of this came directly from them, but then I also tried to think about kind of how we as a library typically what our tone and voice is, and making sure that we were staying true to that, but then also making sure that we were putting it in a way that kept the user in mind as well. So I know we are very, we're working really hard over the last year to kind of put some standards around our customer service, and wanted to make sure we were taking those into consideration as we were putting together our tone and voice. And I think a lot of what I wanted to make sure was we used web kind of best practices as well with regards to the way we write and making it conversational and making it helpful and easy to use. And I think, make sure I go back and get your question for sure. So how would I describe our voice and tone? I think that, I think if I was to use it, it's really, I think this sentence right here really sums it up. It's familiar, friendly, and straightforward. That's what we want that's how I want it to come across when we're writing our content and when we're doing other things, writing other things besides web content. It could be something in our social media. It could be a marketing piece that we're putting together, making sure that our tone and our voice is kind of really, I like that it says human. That's really, I want it to come off as though we're having a conversation with you, and then it's not too stuffy or too formal, that it is really more of a casual conversation among people. Let's see, do we have any other questions? Let's see, there was another question. It seems like you have a public staff intranet of sorts where you can share library staff focused documentation with public. Where is that on the navigation of your site? We do not have, I think you're talking about the wiki page that I was showing you, which is kind of an intranet, and we do not have that any, oh no, this style guide page, sorry. We do not, the actual like content strategy piece is not in our navigation anywhere. We purposely kept it out of it because it's really not for the public, but I wanted to make it available as I've given this presentation to you all, and I've also given a similar presentation to our web users here on campus, and so I wanted to make it available. So the only way I could do that was to actually create a web page in our website. It's just, it is not navigable from anywhere on the site unless I provide you with the link to it. Are there any other questions? All right, well, I wanted to just close with a few ways that you can connect with the web user interest group. If you're not part of this interest group already, we would love to have you join us. There's a link at the bottom here, or there's directions at the bottom here that actually give you instructions on how to get or how to sign up for the interest group through MiALA. We also have a Slack channel. MiALA has a Slack channel, and the user or web UX interest group has a section within that channel, or a channel within the larger MiALA channel, is the web dev UX. You're welcome to, if you have Slack, to join that channel, the MiALA channel, and you can message us through the web dev UX channel on there. We also, if you're a Twitter person, if you want to tweet out something with the hashtag MiALA UX, we can, that will also get to us and or will help us to kind of connect with each other. So we're really looking for ways over the next year to connect or to keep the members of the interest group connected. So one of the things I mentioned before is we are trying to do something on a regular basis. And the next thing we have scheduled, or are in the process of scheduling hopefully, is a meetup, or that will be happening in October. We don't have all of the details yet. We're still working on getting approval, but we're actually hoping to do something where we can meet in person, and we're looking at doing a discussion around user experience, both physical and web. So if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned, watch your email, watch the MiALA newsletter coming out. We'll have more details coming soon, but there are ways that you can connect with any one of us that are part of the leadership team of this interest group. I did include my email. If anybody has any questions and wants to connect with me directly about the presentation or the project that we did here at Western, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or have a conversation with you. If you are on Slack, feel free to chat with me on Slack as well. I always have it open so we can connect that way as well if you're a Slack person. Let's see. Yes, I will figure out a way to share a link to the slides in the chat. I'm not sure how to do that, but I'll figure it out. Is there any other questions before we go? Oh, it looks like I can send it later too. We will get you the slides somehow. I know we have everybody that registered for this event, so we will make sure to get everybody access to the slides so you can click on the links in there, take a deeper look into it, and if, like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to come back and or connect with me in some way. So I think that's it. I appreciate your time today, and we look forward to connecting with you in the Web UX interest group, hopefully. Like I said, we're planning an event in October, and we'll hopefully see you there.